Fabrizio Romano tweeted this morning that no contacts or approaches made by Arsenal with free agents so far following Havertz's injury. Arteta determined to find solutions internally while staff keeps waiting for Bukayo Saka and Martinelli back. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I don't think there's any free agents out there. I mean, I'm available. You don't want to see me out there, that's for sure. So yeah, I wouldn't expect any sort of free agents. I mean, there's so many ways you can go with this. I mean, there was a period in the window to bring back Fabio Vieira, for example, and they turned against that. Now, he's not tearing up trees at Porto, but he's a senior player and he could have done a job. I do think the reason, as Rory was saying, as fans, you don't want to think that you're potentially smarter than the club. Like, you don't want to think that. You think you are, but you're not really. But with the Havertz one, for anyone who's been to the games and seen him after the games and see the work that he puts in, this was one player that maybe seduced you into feeling he was indestructible, but he's just a human being. And yes, he has a level of minutes around him, but look at the absolute sprinting power and distance covered. He's like number 2 in the league for distance covered. So this was in the post. And I do feel if fans can find that out, then we should have risk managed that situation a little bit better. And it is a concern. However, on the flip side of that coin, I'm actually tactically quite excited about what we do. Because I live in the solutions world, and I think it's really going to be interesting. I've got a couple in my own mind, I'm sure you guys have, and I'm excited about that. But I wonder how excited I'll be when we play Leicester and we're 1-0 down with 10 minutes to go. I wonder how excited I'll be then, and I think that's going to be the real test of the next step.
So then, speaking of that, do we literally have to play a front three of Sterling, Trossard and Ethan Nwaneri for the next month or so?
No, we don't have to do that.
Very up front?
Well, I think that there's different options that Arteta has got. You know, we're not going to go into the free agent market and, you know, having, like I think a million other Arsenal fans perusing that list on the websites that provide the list of who's available. I don't think there's really anybody that turns Arsenal from where we are now into a team that's suddenly going to beat Liverpool to the title. And in these moments, there are times where sometimes young stars can emerge and can be, you know, diamonds in the rough that can be refined. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Ethan Nwaneri in particular, I think, during this period to not just cover the goals that we lose in Havertz, but that what we've already lost in Martinelli and, of course, Saka as well. And he's done that to an extent. He's one of Arsenal's top scorers this season and scored some brilliant goals in a very characteristic ways that teams can't seem to really stop. And that's a great trait to have. I think that what Arteta could do, though, is what we've seen in the past when he first came into the club is change the structure, change the system, change the formation. Because I think you're right, Rory, to suggest that we assume that it'll be Nwaneri, Sterling and Trossard as a front three. But I'm not necessarily confident or, you know, comfortable with that always being the case, because then you have nothing senior coming off the bench in a game where you need some extra energy or extra nous. And so maybe if we change the structure or offer an opportunity to a younger player, then you can have a Sterling or, you know, I say a senior player like a 17-year-old Nwaneri is ridiculous, but someone who's got more senior experience maybe in certain games.
Rory, what do you think?
Yeah, I think early on against Leicester, probably against West Ham, I think it will be Trossard, Nwaneri, Sterling. We've seen that once away at Girona, and that was Sterling off the left, Nwaneri off the right. So because I think we've done it once, that'll be the default. Okay, we know we can do that. We won that game. And then maybe on the training ground, when they get the opportunities, they will start looking at some different solutions. Marino as a centre forward is something that I've heard, which, look, you know, you're at the point where you've got to try something. And so, like you said, other than changing the structure, which personally I wouldn't, I feel like we've still got, you know, our strongest back four with Ben White coming back as well. We've still got our strongest midfield. I think you probably leave those as they are, knowing that we won't concede many goals, and then you just figure out how you're going to score goals. But yeah, it's like Clive said, there is a level of excitement, I suppose, about finding out what the solution is going to be.
So then let's throw some names into that. You just mentioned Marino. What players do we think will be deployed into some attacking positions?
I think systemically, what have we done this season? So remember when we lost Odegaard, we all did that 4-4-2 thing with 2 double false nines. I agree with Tom. I think you should keep one of your strikers on the bench to change up. And I think I could see that potentially happening with Odegaard and Trossard centrally, and maybe one wide player in Ethan on one side, and then do something on the left-hand side, whether that be Zinchenko, whether that be Tierney. I do think the introduction, I've got a feeling of Calafiori, this may benefit him from a left-back perspective, because it's not always where you start. it's where you finish. And he does not stand in position, right? He just goes. And I think his ability to smell a goal, just to know when to arrive, is going to be really important. And that's how I think they're going to use Marino to do that late in games. His ability to arrive into those areas, rather than start him there, is how you arrive into those areas. So I do think there's some really good options, you know, to when Ben White gets up to speed, not yet, you can see almost double fullbacks on each side. And I think that would be quite good, because as long as the guy in the front is more the attacking fullback. So I see Timber as maybe more attacking and more of a carrier to be ahead of a Ben White and really travel up there. I just think that there are so many solutions, but none of them are ideal. But we are where we are, right? So that's why we talk about these solutions. So it's just where we are at the moment.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at younger players, we've seen a few this season given, you know, fits and spurts. Nathan Butler-Oyedeji came off the bench well, to be fair, he was standing on the sidelines for longer than he actually got on the pitch that day. But he did come off the bench, and he is 22, same age as Calafiori, believe it or not. And we describe him as a youngster. You've got Ismail Kabia, who also came off the bench early in the season, more of a wide player. And then you're looking at the under-21s, you've got a striker, Keon Edwards, that's there. You've got somebody on the bench who's perhaps even more highly rated in Andre Harriman-Anous as well, who's very highly rated too. But I agree that you need to be careful still with these young guys. You know, yes, I think it's an opportunity for more exposure, but there's a responsibility of not hurrying them in and then killing their careers because they have a bad substitute or cameo appearance. I remember me and Clive were talking earlier in the season about Winery and being careful with him, you know, because if you throw them into a certain game too soon and they get a clattering or they make a few mistakes, that's all that fans then have as their opinion of that player. And coaches as well at senior level, your first opportunity, if you don't take it, that can be quite a big thing to come back from. So you have to be really conscious of that.
Yeah, I think there are some elements of the attack that we've still got that will function. So like the right-hand side, Ødegaard, Nwaneri, and either White or Timber, we know that as a pocket will still produce output. We know that sort of the ball in from the corner of the box that we see from that side a lot of the time. We can still do that, and you can still have Rice and Marino arriving at the back post. So I still think, you know, there are plenty of solutions that we've got that won't necessarily rely on Sterling suddenly popping up with 5 or 10 goals before the end of the season, which you hope that he can do. But other than that, we've still got Declan Rice and Gabriel, so we can just win as many corners as possible. There are all sorts of means of winning those corners. So, yeah, look, we'll find a solution, hopefully. And if we don't, then Win the Dog can have a cap.
More corners. Clive, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Do the club only have themselves to blame for this?
You can't help but feel this is a little bit self-inflicted. You gotta say it. So the thing is, when you have violent agreement amongst Arsenal fans, you have a problem, right? So everybody said, we need another forward, And you get through a really tough, I think it's 11 games in 36 days and 9 games in January. You get through that period and you can see how this works, can't you? You can see how they arrived at the situation. We've got 7 games between now and the start of April, and we just had 9 in 1 month. So it's going to ease up. If we can just get these people rested and refreshed, we can maybe go forward with this. We lose Martinelli straight away. A bit of a sign, but it's a bit late now. Then we lose Havertz, so we're in a bit of a problem. I do think it's very difficult because we all want another forward. There are names out there, but none of us are really convinced by any names that were available. But we still wanted somebody. So you have to make a decision. Do I need to protect the players who are here, or do I look for a strategic long-term solution? And I think they tried the strategic solutions that weren't available and maybe underestimated the impact on the players that have carried us through a very tough January. And now that risk has manifested. We've got 4 of our top boys out. And now we have to manage at least the next 3 games from a league perspective until potentially Saka and Martinelli come back. So you can't say anything but we've done this to ourselves. We've taken a risk and it hasn't paid off. I'm hoping the longer term ramifications around decisioning won't affect the unity and alignment within the club and between the club and the fan base. That would worry me, that really would.
So you mentioned Martinelli. Let's kind of look a little bit ahead. When he does come back, and obviously with Trossard in as well, which one do you think will play as a central striker in the bigger games?
I mean, Trossard is the most experienced there. We have seen Martinelli trialled there before. There was a period of time in the start of kind of first 2 years of Arteta's tenure where they actually did a lot of training with Martinelli as a centre forward, but it never led to, you know, him being picked over another option. So I think that Trossard is the most nailed on of the options that we have to play at centre forward, even when Martinelli returns. The other one, I think more likely maybe than Martinelli, is Waneri himself, because we've heard Arteta speak about his ability to play there. He's arguably, aside from Trossard, probably the best finisher that we've got. Although Trossard's finishing has been slightly off this season compared to last season. So there are two options there. The striker position is the unicorn for Arsenal. You know, it's the area where we all know that we need that massive step up. So whoever's going to fulfil that void for the time being has got a massive responsibility. And for that to fall maybe on a 17-year-old, there is a level of uncomfortability I have with that. And I think I'd rather keep him in his more natural position in the wide area and allow the experience of Trossard to carry us through.
Yeah, I'd probably go Martinelli centrally, Trossard out wide, just because, based on this season especially, I'm more confident that Trossard would be able to create chances for Martinelli from out wide than Martinelli for Trossard from out wide. Think it would be slightly more balanced. But again, at that point, it sounds like Martinelli might not be coming back until after the international break, and you've got Saka coming back, theoretically, hopefully, at that point as well. So by then, we'll have more options. I just hope we don't sort of overuse the two of them when they come back.
Of course we will.
But only be like a month or two left, so hopefully. It's nuts, isn't it, that we're using words like hopefully, and we never dreamt that we would have to be sitting here in this position, especially in the month we're in now with so many people out.
It's been a season of every time we do something good, something bad happens. Even when we win 5-1 against City, we got told we didn't do that right. We got told off for celebrating. And so, the moments of joy have been quite finite. If you're asking me, Trossard for me at the moment, he's the only one available. But I watched Bayern Munich play against Celtic this week, and the way they use Harry Kane centrally, I thought was quite interesting. He's like the central false nine striker, and they all move around him. And I quite like that thought process. It comes back to my feeling of it's not where you start, it's where you arrive to. So Trossard being the central cog, because he's very good at rolling off the back line and receiving it, turning around and creating. I love that about his game. It's not about him being the last pass guy. Get that build up through him, rotate around him, and then arrive into the box. I think if you're Arteta now, he's thinking, you know what I care about the most is where we play. I need to get up to the halfway line and dominate teams. And once I'm there, I've got enough people, good pros, to hopefully do a job in the area. So.